Hello everyone, my name is Nilesh Ghanate. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to set up your local Kubernetes environment using Minikube on a Windows machine. By the end of this video, you will have a Minikube installed and fully working local Kubernetes cluster running on your system. Now, what exactly is Minikube? Minikube is a lightweight tool that lets you run a Kubernetes cluster locally on your laptop, on your machine. So when you start a Minikube, it creates a small virtual machine on which your Kubernetes cluster runs. By default, this Minikube creates only a one node cluster. What does it mean? One node means, as we seen in our Kubernetes architecture diagram, we have one control plane, and there are a couple of worker nodes. For understanding, we used that in our previous video. So here, it creates only one node cluster, which means it acts like the cluster acts as both control plane and worker node on that one node cluster. However, there are options to create a multi-node cluster on it as well. We will see that practically later. But I would say Minikube is perfect for learning Kubernetes basics, or if you want to test your YAML manifest, or if you want to run local development workloads. This is very much ideal. However, it is very important to note that it's not designed for production or large scale simulations, but for learning and experimenting. As I told you, it's absolutely ideal. Even I practice on Minikube and Kind cluster. We'll also see how to set up Kind cluster on your to create a local Kubernetes cluster. Kind is nothing but Kubernetes in Docker. We will see that in the next video. But now let's see how to install our Minikube on our local machine. So what I told you, Minikube is a single node Kubernetes cluster that runs on your machine. It's perfect for development, as I told you, testing, and it's easy to set up. It is fully functional. You can also give some add-ons to it, and it is optimized for Windows 10 or 11. Now, before we set up this Minikube, there are certain prerequisites that you need to take care of. The first one is you must have a virtualization enabled. Now, how to enable the virtualization, I'll show you. But before that, it's very important to understand what exactly is virtualization, and we will see how to enable it later. But let's understand what is virtualization. Virtualization is a technique, I would say, that allows one physical computer to behave like a multiple separate computers. The picture clearly shows that there are three virtual machines on that: VM1, VM2, and VM3 on top of the actual machine. So we have a host operating system, and virtual machines have their own operating systems again. So if you see the picture, it clearly shows. Now, what I told you, it's a technique that allows one physical computer to behave like a multiple separate computers. It's like creating virtual machines inside your real machine. We use virtualization to run multiple OSs. Or see, you have a different operating system on each virtual machine. So on VM1 you can install Windows 10, or VM3 you install Windows 11. On VM2 you can install Linux operating system. So you can run multiple operating systems on one machine. That saves your hardware costs. Very importantly, it creates isolated environments, that helps you test your software safely, and also helps in efficient usage of your resources. So that's the power of virtualization is. Now, with this, we need to also understand what exactly is hypervisor. Hypervisor is a piece of software that creates and manages your VM. Virtualization is the ability to create multiple computers. However, who creates that, who manages that? That is hypervisor. We have something called VMware, Hyper-V, VirtualBox. These are the tools that uses virtualization to create a virtual machine. Each VM gets its own operating system, as I told you, own CPU, RAM allocation, and runs independently, but all of them shares the same underlying physical hardware. So that's the power of virtualization is. Now, how does Minikube uses this virtualization? So the VM runs Linux and Kubernetes runs inside that Linux environment. So even though you are on Windows, Minikube gives a small Linux machine behind the scenes, and that's where your Kubernetes cluster actually lives. I hope the concepts of virtualization and hypervisor is clear to you. Now let's see practically how to enable the virtualization on your machine. For that, what we need to do is we press Control Shift Escape, or you can also press Control Shift plus Delete. So that opens up your task manager, under which you can select performance. By default, it's on the processes that are running on your system. However, we select performance here. Under performance, you click on CPU, and then you see here the virtualization option is enabled. In case you find it to be disabled, you need to enable it during the boot of your machine. And depending on the manufacturer, you need to press either F2 or delete during the boot. And by looking at the option, you need to enable it. However, by default, most of the Windows operating system, they come with a virtualization option enabled. In case you find it disabled, this is the process you need to follow. That's during the boot. You need to enter the BIOS, and then under the BIOS settings, you need to choose a virtualization option, and that has to be enabled there. Now, assuming that virtualization is enabled on your machine, I will proceed further. Now, let's take a look at the official Minikube documentation and see how to install the Minikube on your machine. So here is the Minikube official documentation. Here you have some prerequisites that has to be fulfilled in order to run your Minikube cluster on your machine. Now, as I told you, Minikube is a local Kubernetes cluster for any practice or the Kubernetes. Make sure you have a Docker desktop installed on the machine. So for that, you can directly go to docker.com, where you can install Docker desktop, and then it has to be up and running. So here in my case, my Docker desktop is up and running. Now, to make things even easier, I created a GitHub repository that guides you from the prerequisites all the way to setting up the local Kubernetes cluster. You can also do it from the official documentation. For an easy understanding purpose, I made a GitHub repository. So here is the installation stuff. Everything is clear. The document is very clear. I would highly recommend you to go through the documentation. Anything you're doing, first you have to go through the official documentation. That's how we learn things. So since we are using Windows, I selected a Windows as an operating system, and then it gives you various types of installers. You can directly download the exe file, or you can also use a Windows package manager, that is winget, or you can also use any other chocolate manager as chocolate, and install the Minikube. However, as I told you, to make things easier, I made a GitHub repo. You can go through it and follow the steps accordingly, and you can get the Minikube cluster up and running on your machine. So let's take a look. Let's do it. So for that, first I would open a PowerShell. So this is my PowerShell. It's important to note that you have to run the PowerShell as an administrator. So that will, this will avoid any permission issues during the installation and the cluster setup. That's the main reason that you run it as an administrator. So as I told you, Docker must be up and running. You have to install it, and it has to be running on your system. Now let's follow the steps that's here. And here it says WSL -- install. I think I already have WSL. WSL is nothing but Windows subsystem for Linux. It's a Linux operating system that runs on the Windows. That's how you can run your Kubernetes cluster, since it runs on the Linux operating system. So WSL -- version, because I already have it installed. If you want to install it, just follow this. WSL hyphen hyphen install, that will install your WSL along with the Ubuntu as a default one operating system. So then we already have a Docker desktop installed on the machine. For that, you can also check again Docker hyphen hyphen version. See, I have a Docker version already installed on the account on my machine. Now, to install the Minikube, this is how. Even the Minikube documentation also says when you click on the Windows package manager, it says winget install kubernetes.minikube. So here we have the command, just copy it and then I run it here. Winget install kubernetes.minikube. So that will install all the Minikube cluster on the account. So after that, we will see the version of it. And then now, in order to interact with your Kubernetes cluster, what we need something called a kubectl client, a kubectl, as I told you. So for that, you make sure you install it separately. However, the kubectl command line tool comes with the Minikube cluster, but I would highly recommend you to download it separately. For that, it's easy to install it. So just you run winget install hyphen he hyphen hyphen id and kubernetes dot kubectl. So that will get your kubectl installed on your machine. So let's see. Yes, Minikube is successfully installed. Now let's see Minikube version. See, that shows the Minikube version and the commit ID. So let me clear the screen. Now it's as it's already installed. Let's see if the kubectl is installed on the account. For that, you run kubectl version hyphen hyphen client. Yes, that shows my kubectl is installed. Now, if I run, let's see what we do now. Let's start the Minikube. So we just installed it. However, the cluster is not yet set up. So for that, what we need to do, we need to run this command minikube start hyphen hyphen driver is equal to Docker, because we are using Docker as a driver in order to run this Minikube. So Minikube start hyphen hyphen driver equal to Docker. That will run the Minikube on, it will set up the cluster on the account now. So it's using container D as a container runtime, and then it's using Docker desktop driver with root privileges. That's why we used hyphen hyphen driver equal to Docker. Now, if you want it to be default every time instead of giving explicitly, you can also set it as a default one. You can use this command, use minikube config set driver Docker. That will set the Docker as a default one for you, as a default driver. In order to run, it's pulling the images. Let's wait for a moment, and then our cluster will be up and running, and we'll see some basic commands. So just go through this documentation and you'll have everything you need to set up your cluster. So in the meantime, we'll look some commands, from commonly used commands. So to verify a Minikube, you run Minikube status, and in order to display your cluster information, you just enter kubectl cluster info. As I told you, kubectl is already installed, and that will talk to your Kubernetes cluster. So it's creating the Docker container with 2 CPUs and this much memory it's allocating. So by default, it set up a one node cluster. I hope it is clear to you, because one node cluster serves as both your control plane and a worker node. However, you can also create a multi-node cluster. I'll also show you that. So it's now preparing a Kubernetes on Docker. It's using Docker containers as the nodes. See, now kubectl is configured to use Minikube cluster and the default namespace. So let's see now. We'll run Minikube status. Minikube status that shows the status. Yes, Minikube is a control plane. It's running. Kubelet is running. API server is running, and it's ready. Now let's see our next command. What is that? kubectl get nodes. It shows how many nodes you have on the cluster. As I told you, it sets up only one node cluster. See, it's ready. The status is ready. The name is Minikube control plane. Just only control plane. It acts as both control plane and worker node. So it sets up a one node cluster. Now let's see the documentation again. So let's run few more commands to interact with the Kubernetes cluster. That is kubectl get pods. So I'm running, there are no pods set up. However, there are pods in different namespace. So I'll type -a. That will show you all the pods on the cluster. So in the kube system namespace, we have these many pods up and running. Now let's see. Now if you want to stop Minikube, you use Minikube stop, Minikube start. In order to start the cluster again, you can pause it, you can delete the cluster. When you use Minikube delete -all, that will delete all the cluster, all the profiles from the Minikube. So if you want to pause it, you can pause it. Now we will see how to set up a multi-node Kubernetes cluster. It's pretty much straightforward. We just have to add an additional flag to the Minikube start command, where we use -nodes is equal to 3. That will run our multi-node cluster. We have seen by default it runs only single node cluster. It runs single node cluster. We have seen it. Now let's see how to run a multi-node cluster. What I told you, we have to use a Minikube start -nodes equal to 3 and -driver is equal to Docker, since we are using Docker in the background as a driver. Now this will run 3 nodes on the cluster. One will be a control plane and 2 other will be the worker nodes. So what it does, it creates 3 containers, 3 Docker containers. One will be used for the control plane node, and the other 2 would be used for the worker nodes. Now it's still trying to pull the images. See, it's creating Docker container with 2 CPUs, and it's allocating some memory to it as well. Now let's wait. So how do we check that? We check using a kubectl command, that is kubectl get nodes. That will list all the nodes running on the Minikube cluster. Now it's putting up the control plane. You can also scale up and scale down the containers, or you can also delete it whenever you don't need it. As I said, you can pause it, you can start it, and you can also add some add-ons to it. So let's see that. Once it's up and running, then we will check the status of the Minikube as well. Up until now, we have successfully set up our first local Kubernetes cluster using a Minikube. I hope it is clear to you. Let's wait for some more time. It's creating another Docker container. If you see, initially it was creating 2, now it's creating another one. Let's give it some time. Once it's up and running, you will have a fully working environment right on your machine, where you can deploy applications, experiment with Kubernetes concepts. If you see, first one, for the first node, it gave for a worker node Minikube -mo2. If you look at this one, and for node 3, it's giving Minikube -mo3 worker node in the Minikube cluster. So it's in the process of creating it. We have a multi-node cluster up and running now. Let's see if we got a 3-node cluster or not. So let me clear the screen first. kubectl get nodes. Yes, we have 3-node cluster. If you see, one is Minikube and the other one is Minikube MO2 and MO3. So this is a multi-node cluster. Very simple and easy to set up a multi-node cluster from a single node.